Welcome back to the channel, everyone, and another new movie review. I love cheering on my fellow Bostonians, and Ben Affleck is no exception. This week released The Accountant 2, the sequel to 2016's The Accountant, starring Affleck and Jon Bernthal. I wasn't sure how I would receive this film. The marketing for it has not exactly been ubiquitous. So when I sat down in the theater and the opening sequence rolled, I knew I was in for something dark and something a little different from the original. The film deals with human trafficking, specifically along the US-Mexican border, and the hardships families who are caught up in that underworld have to endure, especially women and children. It is a hard subject to tackle, but this film does the matter justice, never actually making overt political statements or choosing one particular policy side or another. It just aims to show you what the nature of the beast truly is. And for this gringo, who was watching this film with a theater full of Mexican nationals, all of whom have been touched in some way or another by the criminal activities of kidnapping, human smuggling, and, for lack of a better term, slavery, when the movie ended, there was no applause. One would not expect that in this country with this topic, but every audience member got up, and when I saw them in the upturned lights of the theater entrance and the lobby, I could tell by the looks on their faces just how much this film touched them emotionally and psychologically, and I mean that in a very positive way. Human trafficking is a political buzzword in the United States. In Mexico, it's an everyday danger to be aware of. Quick side note, I spent about a year in the smallest town in the smallest state of Mexico, a state called Tlaxcala. I happened to go to the only bus station in that town one day. I was floored and still affected to this day by the 6-foot by 6-foot bulletin board inside that station. It was covered in missing persons flyers. Children, babies, women, young men disappeared, taken, and there were so many that the newest flyers were just stapled onto the old ones. And you could see they went about 10 to 12 deep, side to side. And this was just for this tiny little town in the middle of nowhere. So yes, what you see and what this film is trying to bring to light is real. It does not embellish the problem in any way, shape, or form. So spoiler alert for the film and for the uninformed in the world. Do you think the criminal element in reality is beyond making a decision to murder 40 children and put them in a mass grave in the desert, like a scenario played out in this film tries to do? Think again. It happens here, and it happens often. So before I get into the plot or the production or any of that, I must first say thank you to the producers of this film for tackling this issue in a serious and careful way. With that, let me say, this is now my pick for the best film released so far this year. It was The Amateur, which is still a great film, but this film was great in basically every way. Yes, I got a couple of nitpick items, but they're just that, nitpick. Ben Affleck plays Christian Wolf, the savant accountant criminal assassin, and he plays it perfectly. Realizing in this script that he's 8 years older and he began to break out of his shell in the first film, this Christian Wolf is a little more playful, a little bit more mischievous, even though for him, he's just being him. He's a little bit more comfortable with the world, but he's still a recluse, and his character gets some needed growth throughout the film, mostly due to the involvement of Jon Bernthal's character Braxton, Christian's younger brother. And if I'm being honest, I gotta tell my fellow Bostonian that, as good as he was in the role of Christian Wolf, Bernthal stole the movie, and when the two are together on screen, you would think they really were brothers with real history and real family conflict between them. The dialogue, the banter, the authenticity with which Bernthal delivers his lines, and the filters and behaviors that Affleck uses for his character to react to those lines, it just becomes a seamless interaction between the two actors. And this is the best part of the film, the exploration of their relationship. Braxton's constant reaching out and need to connect with his brother, being the only person in the world he wishes to have that kind of intimate relationship with, and Christian's need to be himself while learning just exactly how to be a better, bigger brother. At times, it's quite touching. Now, here's the basic plot. Ray King, played by J.K. Simmons, is semi-retired, but taking on a case of a missing family who were taken by Mexican cartel members almost 9 years ago. His death brings the involvement of Mary Beth Medina, played by Cynthia Addai-Robinson, who is also reprising her role from the first film, onto the case. She is instructed to contact the accountant. And this is what sets us off onto the races in a story that takes us from California and then to Juarez. Of course, our three heroes are now in the crosshairs of the cartel and their methods, and there's a mysterious new assassin on the scene whose story is integral to the final resolution of the film. In the middle of all this chaos is a child that Christian believes is just like him, a savant, and we're given a healthy dose of Justine, the British accent leader of Christian's support team at the group home for children affected with similar savant diagnoses, as Christian Wolf himself. There are some incredible action scenes throughout this film, but really, as good as they are, it is the script, the dialogue, the interactions between each character that really drives the movie, and each character is given some great scenes to shine. My favorite being Bernthal spending about 3 minutes talking to himself in a hotel room in Berlin and trying to man up enough courage to call a woman and talk about getting his dog back. It really shows another side to this actor who is known for intense, violent roles, which this role definitely is, but parts like this hotel scene give another level of depth for Bernthal to explore and showcase his acting abilities. And I couldn't stop laughing throughout this whole sequence. The film is at times laugh-out-loud funny, especially Bernthal and Affleck's interactions, and it needs to be lighthearted in moments because the subject matter is dealing with is so dark and heavy. And it eventually builds to a climax that delivers the goods. One last compliment to this film is this: it could have been lazy at any time and leaned back upon recycling everything great about the first film. It does not. Certainly there's a lot of connection to the first film in terms of Christian's behaviors and his lifestyle, but instead this sequel takes the foundation of the first and builds and expands instead of resting on any previously achieved laurels. Now, for a couple of nitpicks. The support team for Christian Wolf is a little beyond the suspension of disbelief. I don't want to spoil it for you, but the group he and Justine have put together is a little, well, hard to swallow. Second, there is some lacking resolution to the story in the end that, if not done intentionally because a third film is being considered, is a little disappointing because you want to know more about a certain character, and especially when it comes to our new assassin, Anae or Edith or whatever name you want to give to her, and how her character actually moves forward. In fact, there seemed like there was so much more to explore with this character, and I think there could have been more done with her. Again, maybe intentional, or maybe cut for time because the movie was already 2 hours long as it is. And that's about it for the negatives. For me, for this film, it's highly entertaining. It's very well done in basically every aspect of production. And it's just a great example of how cinema can explore social and political issues while respecting the audience to be able to digest that information, understand the problem, and come to their own conclusions. I cannot recommend this film enough to anyone looking for a movie that is well worth the price of admission. And that's what I think. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. I thank you for watching. Remember, I'm still your reluctant gringo, and from somewhere south of the border, salut and a huevo.